Fáilte Rómh go léir cóide. You're very, very welcome to what is already a wonderful Trinity Monday on this beautiful day. Very special welcome to the Nigerian Ambassador, Your Excellency. We're delighted you could join us, and we're also delighted that Jaja's daughter is here, so thank you very, very much for joining us. So the Ambassador was just asking me what's Trinity Monday about, and just to say that it's a very, very special day in our calendar. It's the day in which we announce the students who've become scholars. They've shown incredible academic prowess, and it's the day in which we announce what we call our new fellows of the university. And it's the day in which we celebrate things from the past as well, and commemorate. And this memorial discourse is about remembering the life and work of a Trinity graduate. And this year's discourse, as you already know, is on Jaja Wachuku. And I'm here really just to introduce the speaker. And the speaker is Geoghegan, Professor Geoghegan, and it's my job to tell you a little bit about him, even though I know many people in this room know Patrick really, really well. So Patrick is Professor in Modern History here in Trinity. He's a leading scholar of 18th and 19th century Ireland, with particular expertise on the changing nature of the Anglo-Irish relationship in this period. His work on the Irish Act of Union, the rebellion of Robert Emmet, and the political and legal career of Daniel O'Connell, culminating in 5 monographs, has been recognised both nationally and internationally, and has helped reshape perspectives on the changing relationship between constitutional nationalism and republicanism. So Patrick is not just a fantastic scholar. I think we all know that Patrick is an amazing speaker and has a huge commitment to public engagement and public service. Most of you will already know that he presents the award-winning Talking History on News Talk Radio, bringing the discipline of history to a wide and very popular audience. And the show's weekly podcasts are among the most downloaded in the country, and I think you really have contributed to making people out there interested in history. In addition, his YouTube video lecture series, Rebellion in Ireland, has garnered over 600,000 views. And Patrick has also served as the president of the Irish Legal History Society and is the chair of the advisory board of the Royal Irish Academy's Dictionary of Irish Biography project. And he served previously on the government's expert advisory group on commemorations, so no better person to be looking in the past, and was also a special advisor to the Taoiseach. So you can see from that Patrick's dedication goes beyond the academic life here and a huge commitment to the public, and I suppose to the love of history. Aside from his academic achievements and other activities, I also want to signal out Patrick's deep commitment to Trinity. He served as our senior lecturer between 2011 and 2014, and during that time developed new policies and on admissions and the undergraduate curriculum. For many years, he was the history coordinator on the Trinity Access programme, a programme that's really important to us, helping students from different backgrounds to reach their potential at university. And again, I think this really shows, Patrick, the way you love history so much and want to bring it to so many different audiences. He was a winner of the Provost Award for Teaching Excellence, which I think is no surprise, because if anyone ever listens to Patrick, he's such a compelling speaker, and you always end up wanting to hear more. And he's, of course, and I can't not mention this, Vice President of the College Historical Society. I see David there, and if I didn't mention that, there'd be trouble. And he wrote an excellent history of the Society for its 250th anniversary, the oldest student society in the world, may I add, the oldest debating society in 2020. And actually, he also delivered the 2003 Trinity Monday Memorial Discourse on Robert Emmet. So it's quite unusual. I think we have somebody delivering it 2 times, and I think it speaks to your wonderful and amazing capabilities, Patrick. So Patrick's dedication to Trinity makes him an ideal candidate to deliver this memorial discourse again, which itself is a part of the fabric of the tradition of the university. So it's with great pleasure for me to now invite Professor Geoghegan to deliver the 2025 Trinity Monday Memorial Discourse on Jaja Wachuku. And over to you, Patrick. Thank you so much.
Provost, Your Excellency, distinguished guests, fellows, scholars, friends and colleagues. In October 1961, the subject of this year's Trinity Monday Discourse, Jaja Wachuku, delivered a farewell address to the United Nations General Assembly. He had just been appointed the first foreign minister of the newly independent Nigeria, and this required him to leave his position as his country's permanent representative to the UN. Seizing the opportunity to speak about the great global challenges of the day, he delivered a fiery oration that was reported around the world. Time magazine hailed his verbal swagger, calling him the pride of Africa, and claimed he was head and shoulders above his contemporaries in ability and common sense. Noting how he made quite a sight on the rostrum, dressed in his gleaming white robes, Time quoted in full the most eloquent and courageous part of the speech. It was an attack on both the United States and the Soviet Union for their failures of leadership, as well as their narrowly self-interested foreign policies. In language that resonates as much in 2025 as it did in 1961, Wachuku described how both Russia and the United States were, quote, climbing from the pedestal of greatness to the pedestal of insanity. We expect leadership from them, they give us destruction. We expect wisdom from them, they give us lack of knowledge. We expect objectivity from them, they present us with blurred vision. In a brief biographical sketch, Time magazine recounted how Wachuku was descended from 20 generations of African chiefs and how he had won a place at Dublin's Trinity College, where a law degree came easily, along with a medal for oratory. That medal was awarded by the College Historical Society. In March 2020, only a few days before Ireland went into lockdown and the world changed so dramatically, the Society honoured Wachuku as part of its 250th celebrations. A brilliant and compelling portrait of Wachuku by the talented artist Mick O'Dea was unveiled by the Society, and it normally hangs in the Hist Conversation Room upstairs, alongside with some of the other great figures from the Society's history. It is a measure of the esteem in which Wachuku is held that the portrait was partly funded by our own Department of Foreign Affairs. Wachuku's daughter, Nuabeze, and his niece Joy attended the events, and I was honoured to meet them, having explored the story of Wachuku's time in Trinity and his leadership on the world stage in my history of the Society. They were proud that he was being honoured in the university where he had learned so much, and that his portrait would take its place among the pantheon of great men and women in the Society's history. And we are delighted that Nuabeze is able to join us again today with some friends and family members, alongside Nigeria's ambassador to Ireland, some representatives from the Nigerian embassy, and some of our own students from Nigeria. At the unveiling in 2020, Nigeria's then ambassador to Ireland, Dr. Uzoma Emenike, paid tribute to her country's first foreign minister and thanked Trinity for honouring him in this way. She praised him as a lawyer, a politician, a diplomat, a humanitarian, a Pan-Africanist, and above everything, a man that made sure in his daily life that he built bridges nationally and internationally. The event was hailed as a significant moment in relations between the two countries, with the ambassador praising the decision to include him among the portraits. It was a relationship, she said, that keeps moving from strength to strength. Born on the 1st of January 1918 in Nigeria, in what was then a British colony, Jaja Wachuku excelled in school and won a number of prestigious scholarships. In 1939, with the world on the brink of war, Wachuku set off for Ireland, where he was admitted to Trinity to study law. We tend to think of internationalization and the recruitment of global students as a recent phenomenon, but Trinity, uniquely on the island, was an international university in the 1930s and 1940s. The college had a significant number of international students, mostly from Africa, but with some from Asia as well. Years later, the Irish Times noted how a high proportion of these students, on returning to their own countries, were prominent in the emergence of those nations and the political and cultural developments of their peoples. Wachuku's tutor was the remarkable Max Henry, James Maxwell Henry, a mathematics lecturer and fellow who had been asked years earlier by Provost Bernard to, in the words of A.A. Luce, give an eye to students from distant lands. Henry has won considerable praise for the support he gave to international students, and it has been said that he viewed the charge as a sacred trust and fulfilled it. He was also a remarkable figure in college life, and Wachuku would have found much to like and admire in this brilliant talker. According to Luce, Henry was full of theories about everything. You went to his lectures on geometry to learn about logic. You went to his lectures on logic to learn about life. It was here that Wachuku trained as a lawyer and studied to become a great orator. He also began acquiring books at an incredible rate, and by the time he returned to Nigeria, he was able to bring with him one of the biggest private collections in the country. Wachuku threw himself into college life. An excellent footballer, he played centre forward for the Association Football Club here. In November 1942, there was a revival of the annual TCD Miscellany concert in the GMB, something that had been banned 4 years earlier because, as the Irish Times delicately put it, they tended to develop along somewhat boisterous lines. Wachuku sang several African songs at the revival concert while also playing the guitar. Most significantly of all, Wachuku became a leading debater in the College Historical Society, the HIST, the oldest student society in the world. This was the place where future leaders, lawyers, revolutionaries, writers, scientists, and scholars had developed their oratorical skills since 1770, and where they continue to flourish. Wachuku excelled in the weekly debates, speaking on matters of national and international significance, and refining his ability to present compelling arguments. Wachuku's exploits at the HIST were long remembered. In one profile in the Irish Times in 1960, he was praised as a fiery orator, and it was recalled that he galvanized more than one debate by turning up in full Nigerian dress. This success later inspired Wachuku to wear traditional Nigerian robes at the United Nations and when representing Nigeria on the world stage. It became an important part of his projection of Nigerian self-confidence, as well as a crucial part of his own branding, as he demonstrated his pride in his country's cultural heritage and identity. Back in Nigeria, he usually wore a suit and tie to cabinet meetings, and some journalists noted that it was a Trinity tie. Wachuku was awarded the Silver Medal for Oratory at the inaugural meeting of the Society in November 1944, a meeting where the Taoiseach Eamon de Valera and the Foreign Minister of the Czechoslovakian government in exile, Dr. Jan Masaryk, delivered significant speeches that made the front page of the Irish Times. The auditor that year was Michael B. Yeats, the son of the late poet, and in his address on the small nations, he made an eloquent plea for smaller countries to play an active and honest part in international affairs. Responding to the paper, de Valera reflected on what had gone wrong with the League of Nations, while Masaryk spoke of the need for a new system of collective security once the Second World War was over. Masaryk believed that this was the only way to defend countries against the aggressive policies of more powerful neighbours. The Irish Times ran a separate piece on the award of the medal to Wachuku under the headline Irish Oratory, and included one of the earliest photos we have of him. And it reported that the presentation of the medal delighted the audience. Wachuku studied legal sciences here and was awarded the prestigious prize in Roman law. He graduated BA in December 1943 and LLB in June 1944. Years later, he always spoke warmly about his time in Trinity, and it was said that he never missed an opportunity of speaking about the intellectual environment and charm of TCD. He was also able to share stories with other significant figures in the history of Nigeria who also studied here. These included Dr. Moses Magic Dunmi, who became Minister for Health in the First Republic and who studied medicine here, and Udo Udoma, who played a crucial role in the Nigerian independence movement and who later became a judge in Nigeria and then the first Chief Justice of newly independent Uganda. Entering the King's Inns, Wachuku was called to the Irish Bar in November 1944, the same day he was awarded his Medal for Oratory, and he became one of the first Africans to qualify as a barrister in Ireland. He remained in Dublin for 3 years, practicing as a lawyer. In 1947, Wachuku decided to return home to help shape his country's future. His dream was to win independence for Nigeria through peaceful means, engaging in dialogue rather than armed resistance. Over time, he and other reformers were able to persuade Britain to concede a gradual handover of power. During this campaign, Wachuku often ridiculed British officials who claimed that Nigeria was not capable of nationhood, and he boldly articulated a vision for how and when the country should become independent. In 1957, there was a major split about whether the Nigerian delegates should demand independence from Britain at a constitutional convention held in London. The Times of London reported that, quote, "It was Mr. Wachuku's oratory which brought a compromise, as he explained the need for unanimous consent if they were to have any authority." Wachuku was later celebrated for having deployed his energy, versatility, shrewdness, and gift of oratory for the cause of Nigerian independence. As Nigeria prepared to break free of British rule, Wachuku was elected the first indigenous speaker of the Nigerian House of Representatives in 1959. On the 1st of October 1960, Nigeria finally became an independent state, and during the handover ceremony, Wachuku received the Instrument of Independence, in other words, the Freedom Charter, from Princess Alexandra of Kent, who was representing Queen Elizabeth II. Following this, Wachuku was appointed Nigeria's first ambassador to the United Nations, where his leadership was instrumental in Nigeria becoming an influential power on the world stage. He was the first African to chair a United Nations Conciliation Commission, and he played a significant role in helping to mediate conflicts. As it happened, the president of the United Nations General Assembly at this time was another Trinity graduate, Frederick Boland. He was at this time also the president of the College Historical Society and soon to become Chancellor of the University of Dublin. In a profile in the New York Times, published in February 1961, the article began, "When the chairman of the United Nations Conciliation Committee speaks, the voice is that of Africa, but the manner is that of Ireland." Noting that he had studied at Trinity College Dublin, the paper reported that he had won at the UN, in only a few short months, a reputation as a brilliant, astute, and witty speaker. The concluding observation was that Wachuku had an instinctive flair for the dramatic. According to the New York Times, these are generally accepted as Irish characteristics. Wachuku negotiated Nigeria's admission to UNESCO, and it was his decision to send Nigerian peacekeeping forces to the Congo in the new country's first major military deployment. He also played a pivotal role in the election of the first country from sub-Saharan Africa, Liberia, to the UN Security Council. This had been opposed and was only made possible thanks to a compromise brokered by Wachuku and the lead negotiator of the Irish delegation to the UN, Dr. Conor Cruise O'Brien. As the New York Times reported, a deal was reached when Dr. O'Brien, a Trinity College man, went off in a corner for talks with another Trinity man, Jaja Wachuku of Nigeria. Thanks to this deal, Ireland was elected to the Security Council for the first time in its history, having agreed to rotate the 2-year term with Liberia and took its place on the Council in 1962. During this time, Wachuku won considerable praise and criticism for his fiery and unapologetic speeches. To many, he was a courageous defender of African rights, a fearless and outspoken orator, and a champion of equality. Others were threatened by his self-confidence, objected to his tone, and were offended by his natural belief that he was on a level of equality with everyone else. In his memoir, Conor Cruise O'Brien described how British administrators liked courtly manners and resented, quote, the uppity manners of successful Africans such as Wachuku. Conor Cruise O'Brien recounts a joke that was told at the UN at this time. It involved supposedly witty answers to a question about which country had the best record for the education of Africans. The top two were the French and the British. The French, because they gave a first-rate education to a very small number of Africans. The British, because they gave a not quite so good education to a much larger number of Africans. After them was the Portuguese, because they gave their African subjects no education at all. The so-called punchline was that the worst of all were the Irish, because they educated Jaja Wachuku. During one debate in the United Nations, Wachuku was incensed and outraged when an obnoxious and hugely insulting racist comment was made. He immediately demanded an apology and a retraction, but none was forthcoming, and few were willing to back him up. Wachuku decided to make a mockery of proceedings by pretending he had fallen asleep. And he ensured that all eyes were on him as he performed his own silent but profoundly powerful protest. Wachuku was on friendly terms with 3 American presidents, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, and Lyndon B. Johnson. During his visits to the United States, he also met with the great civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. and discussed the plight of African Americans. It was important, Wachuku said, that Nigeria was friends with the United States, but he warned that whether this was possible depended on how America treats its African Americans. All vestiges of discrimination must be wiped out, he declared. Wachuku was fearless in his denunciations of segregation and the oppression facing so many in the United States. Wachuku's guiding philosophy, as he once outlined, was that because Nigeria was the country with the largest concentration of black people in the world, it owed a duty to all black people to do everything possible to fight racism and eradicate the humiliation of black people wherever it was to be found in the world. In a significant declaration, he stated that this mission was Nigeria's, whether it likes it or not. It is its duty. It is part of Nigeria's destiny. If Nigeria does not do this, then it has failed in its mission. The speech Jaja Wachuku delivered to the United Nations in October 1961 was the moment the newly independent Nigeria took her place among the nations of the world. All the rhetorical devices that Wachuku had studied and rehearsed in this very chamber were deployed to devastating effect in an address which secured his place as one of the great orators of his time. One of Wachuku's most effective oratorical techniques was the use of parallelism. He liked to present similar grammatical structures to express related ideas, enhancing the rhythm and impact. Wachuku also liked to deploy anaphora, repeating words at the beginning of clauses to create emphasis, rhythm, and a memorable effect. We see both at work in the section, we expect leadership, we expect wisdom, we expect objectivity. Another favorite technique was the use of antithesis, and he liked to place contrasting ideas side by side for dramatic effect. A perfect example is the most famous line of the speech. They are climbing from the pedestal of greatness to the pedestal of insanity. The United Nations has a small amount of archival footage of this speech that hopefully we can watch now. Wachuku was a master at using vivid imagery. In the speech, he warned Portugal, one of the greatest colonial powers remaining in Africa, about the dangers inherent in believing its colonies should be held at all costs. Quote, "Portugal persists in refusing to accept the truth will make Portugal whole, because when the truth begins to surround Portugal with a withering fire, the decadent outside coating will be burned up, and the internal remains will be purified. This was biblical language, but the truth was not going to set Portugal free. It was going to destroy it. For Wachuku, colonial rule was something that was destined to be burned away by the force of historical justice. The 1960s was a decade of great oratory, but even in a crowded field, Wachuku's speech stands apart. It was a masterpiece of diplomatic oratory, a global call for justice, leadership, and human rights that resonated worldwide. Wachuku knew the power of language. He understood that when words were deployed with skill and conviction, they could shape the course of history. 60 years ago, his powers of persuasion and his critical intervention changed the course of world history and saved the life of Nelson Mandela. In 1963, Mandela was put on trial for sabotage and other crimes in what became known as the Rivonia trial. Determined to eradicate any threat to its existence, the South African government pressed for the death penalty. Mandela was convinced he would be killed and announced defiantly from the dock, "I am prepared to die." By this time, Wachuku was the foreign minister of Nigeria, and he worked tirelessly behind the scenes to persuade both the British and American governments to intervene. As Kenneth Brown, the Henry Brandes Professor of Law Emeritus at the University of North Carolina, recounts in his book, Saving Mandela, contact by both governments was initiated based upon a request from the widely respected and moderate Nigerian Foreign Minister, Jaja Wachuku. Wachuku convinced them that the execution of the leaders, and Mandela especially, would greatly weaken the position of those, such as the Nigerian government, who were trying to cancel moderation. He also warned that it would destabilize African politics across the continent. The Wachuku request, as it became known, was brought to the South African government, with its foreign minister conceding that the argument presented was very strong. Wachuku was a hugely respected figure in South Africa, despite his denunciations of apartheid, and the government remembered with gratitude a speech that he had given at the UN General Assembly, where he had insisted that white people could also be Africans. The intervention of Wachuku proved decisive. Incredible international pressure was brought to bear in South Africa, and when Mandela was eventually convicted, he was sentenced to life imprisonment instead of being put to death. Wachuku continued to campaign on behalf of Mandela until he was eventually released from Robben Island in 1990. In December 1963, in recognition of his contribution to Nigerian independence and world affairs, Wachuku was awarded an LLD by this university. As the calendar explains, the LLD can be awarded to any graduate who has been appointed to such public position as may seem to the board sufficiently distinguished. Unable to attend the ceremony in person because of pressures of work, Wachuku was awarded it in absentia. Wachuku hadn't been back in Ireland since 1947, joking to a journalist that it was because he needed at least 7 days to spend here, and it is no place to hop into and away again. Besides, he added, I have too many friends there for a short stay. Wachuku was now regarded internationally as a voice for newly independent nations, an orator diplomat who commanded attention and respect. As Minister for Foreign Affairs, he used his position to challenge injustice, and he was fearless in speaking up for freedom and human rights. In 1963, when a military coup in Togo overthrew the government, Wachuku stood firm in refusing to recognize the new regime. At the inaugural conference of the Organization of African Unity held in Ethiopia, Emperor Haile Selassie pleaded with Wachuku to allow Togo to be admitted, but he held firm. because he knew that doing so would legitimize violent regime change in Africa. Appointed aviation minister in April 1965, Wachuku introduced new aviation laws in Nigeria and established the country's first aviation training center, and his visionary work is still lauded today. He visited Ireland in an official capacity that summer for 3 days of discussion about aviation policy. In January 1966, he offended many people in his own political party when he fired the chairman of the Airway Board, a party official who was using the job for his own personal benefit. Under intense pressure to reverse the decision, Wachuku refused to back down and instead tendered his resignation. The very next day, in a shocking but unrelated development, there was a coup in Nigeria and the government was overthrown. The Prime Minister was murdered, with his body later discovered by a roadside. Wachuku woke up to find armed soldiers surrounding his house. Challenging them about what they were doing there, he was only partially reassured when he was told, "Do not be afraid, sir. We have come to protect you for being an honest government minister." Retiring to his hometown, Wachuku became an outspoken defender of human rights during the Biafran War, the civil war in Nigeria between 1967 and 1970. He spoke fearlessly against the practice of recruiting child soldiers and was arrested and imprisoned as a result. Many Nigerians were dismayed that such a hugely respected national figure was being treated this way, and he was eventually freed by the military. After the war, Wachuku devoted himself to law, education, and community development before returning to politics when he was elected to the Senate in Nigeria's Second Republic. There he chaired the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and in this capacity made several secret trips to South Africa to urge President P.W. Botha to end apartheid and free Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners. On the floor of the Senate, he made one of his greatest speeches, declaring that the downfall of apartheid shall flow from the barrels of dialogue and contact, not from the barrels of isolation and guns. This was controversial, and he was removed from his post. In the 1990s, following the release of Nelson Mandela and the reopening of diplomatic relations with South Africa, Wachuku was hailed as a visionary, and many prominent politicians and historians demanded that he receive an apology. Wachuku died on the 7th of November, 1996. He had married his wife Rhoda in 1951, and they had 5 children, and adopted 7 during the devastating civil war and conflict of the 1960s. In 2010, to mark the Golden Jubilee of Nigerian independence, the President, Goodluck Jonathan, awarded Wachuku a special posthumous anniversary award. 4 years later, in 2014, during the centenary celebrations of the creation of modern Nigeria, President Jonathan named him a hero of the struggle for Nigeria's independence and hailed him a pioneering political leader. Today, if you visit the Federal Capital Territory in Nigeria, you can walk down Jaja Wachuku Street, and a leading politician has promised that the new international airport being built in his home state of Abia will be named in his honor. Today, Wachuku is remembered as an orator who left behind ideas as well as words, with perhaps the most important one, the idea that justice must be spoken, liberty must be defended, and that the voice of Africa belongs in every room where its future is being decided. In an age of polarization, his commitment to dialogue stands out, and it is why I am profoundly grateful to the Provost for choosing him as the subject of this year's Trinity Monday Discourse. By remembering his life, by celebrating the values he held dear, we renew our own commitment to internationalism, to human rights, to democracy, and to peacemaking. And we are proud of the fact that it was here in Trinity that he refined his mastery of language and learned the power of eloquent persuasion. 22 years ago, in 2003, I delivered my first Trinity Monday discourse on the Irish revolutionary Robert Emmet to mark the bicentenary of his death. I hailed the power of his oratory and noted how his passion for liberty had shaped Irish history. In my conclusion, I observed that Emmet's vision had outlived his death because his belief in the ideal of freedom and the rights of all people had found a new resonance in each new generation. That same message, that same conclusion can be applied to the subject of this year's discourse, Jaja Wachuku. He was another brilliant orator who used his words to inspire the oppressed, shame the enemies of freedom, and change the world for the better. More than anyone else, Wachuku helped Nigeria take her place among the nations of the earth. He was a man of peace and a brilliant orator who shone a light on the evil of apartheid and saved Mandela. Wachuku was Emmet's opposite when it came to method, but he was his equal when it came to moral clarity and courage. Wachuku's portrait now hangs in the GMB. The Hist runs a competition named after him, and he has become a celebrated part of our college's story. His image provides an enduring challenge to us all, students, scholars, fellows, and citizens, to match words with conviction and conviction with action. His story reminds us that language can be a weapon against injustice, that diplomacy can be a force for liberation, and that universities like Trinity have a profound role to play in shaping the thinkers, the leaders, and the change makers of tomorrow. In a world that once again appears to be tottering from the pedestal of greatness to the pedestal of insanity, we are reminded that we are all called to use our voices to speak up for justice, democracy, human rights, and freedom.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm profoundly moved by Patrick. This is the second time I've met Patrick. And I really want to say a huge thank you to him and to Trinity College Dublin. Growing up with my father was an amazing experience for me. Patrick is right. My father had a great sense of humor. He always told jokes. He always encouraged everybody to stand tall, express an opinion, so long as you could defend it. He was very fair, very just, and was incredibly fond of Trinity College Dublin. Patrick, you're right. He had pleasant memories in this place, and he used to tell us stories of the college square with the lawns. And the only time you would offend my father, get him really cross, was to walk on the lawn at home. He didn't like that at all. My father was a very courageous man. He was prepared to hold an opinion that no one else shared. He was fair, just, I'm very generous. But then again, I am biased. I'm his daughter. And he used to call me the Queen of Sheba. My children called him Boo Boo Boo, the magic man, because anytime we went home, he would magic up bananas and popcorn. I am humbled by the interest that Trinity continues to take in my father, who in Nigeria is not a typical, what we call in Nigeria, big man. My father, some people felt he was a very proud man. He wasn't proud. He was content with who he was. Like Patrick said, he believed in the power of words. He believed that all human beings were equal and that we all needed to reason, and that is the reason why God created us. Patrick mentioned a speech that was controversial when he was senator in the Second Republic, which lost him the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He did believe that apartheid would end through dialogue and engagement, and that the white people in South Africa were also Africans. He profoundly believed in the human race. I'm very grateful for this opportunity yet again to come to Dublin. This is my second time to come to your wonderful university. The last time I came with my cousin, Joy, who came all the way from the United States of America. In our family, we've made law. This is what most of us do. She now sits as a judge in one of the districts in New York, in the United States of America. It's ironic when I reflect on part of the speech that Patrick made about what my father said about the great powers. Instead of giving us wisdom, they were descending, can't remember the words now. And we seem to have come full circle. We now have Trump. I'm exceedingly grateful. I don't want to take too much of your time. But Patrick seems to know more about my family than I do. But then he's a historian and researcher. And I hope that this speech will be prepared in a document that would be made available to our Honorable Ambassador, Her Excellency here, because it is important for us as Nigeria not to forget our role in the world. My father insisted that Nigeria was the leader of every black nation in this world, and we must not forget that. We have to remember what our role is in the world, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much for that. I think we'll agree. I think we can all agree that Jaja Wachuku passed on passion to his children and the ability to speak up. So it's just my job to bring this to a close. I want to thank Patrick again for an absolutely amazing discourse, utterly fantastic, and I think you felt that with the applause in the room. I'd just like to also thank, I'd like to thank Gemma and Bernadette. We actually today have our first ever fellow from the deaf community, and while we always try to have sign language interpreters here, I think it's especially meaningful today, so very, very delighted to see Don Bosco here. I'd like to thank as well Claire for all the work she did in this. Thank you very much. And Sienna, thank you very much there from my office. And there, a whole lot of work goes on behind the scenes. And especially then I want to thank Patrick again for his wonderful words. I was just reading, that Jaja said we expect wisdom from our leaders. And we actually heard a similar sentiment today when we went to the commemoration service in the chapel. And I think that's really, really poignant at this time in the world. It resonates with what you said and what you said, Patrick, earlier. And we would hope that the scholars that we're celebrating today, that the fellows that we're celebrating today, will bring that wisdom and that courage, that standing for values that matter out into the world around us. And with that, I want to say thank you to all of you for attending, and have a lovely rest of Trinity Monday. Thank you very much.